Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're digging into a story that's, well, is powerful, really powerful. It captures incredible courage, but also the stark realities of flying in World War II. We're going to be talking about a man named George D. Harris. Now, you might not know the name right off, but his journey, it really intersected with some of the most intense, some of the most dramatic moments of the air war. And for this deep dive, we've got quite a mix of sources. There are personal accounts from Harris himself, which is amazing. Plus, the really detailed official military records and also those historical overviews that give the bigger picture of the operations he was part of. It's kind of like putting together a puzzle. Really, it gives us a very close look at a life lived under, well, just unimaginable pressure.
Exactly. And our goal here, our mission today, it isn't just to list the facts of George Harris's service. We really want to try and understand the immense pressures, those split-second decisions he had to make, and sometimes the impossible choices faced by individuals like him in a war this huge. What did it actually mean to survive, day after day, mission after mission, when you know the odds are just completely stacked against you? So we'll trace his path, from his first combat flights right into the middle of one of the most brutal air battles of the war, and then into his extraordinary time as a prisoner of war. It's a story that really speaks volumes about human resilience.
Okay, let's jump in then. Harris's combat career. He was flying the B-17, right? The
Yeah.
Flying Fortress.
That's right, the workhorse.
And his records show he was thrown into some incredibly tough missions almost immediately. You have to try and picture it. Those early days, stuck in those cramped, freezing aluminum tubes, way up high, the constant vibration, the noise.
And the thin air, the bone-chilling cold, then punctuated by, the terrifying sound of machine guns. Every single flight was a massive test of endurance, of nerve.
Absolutely. And one of his early, really intense ones was this long shuttle mission to Regensburg. That was back in August 43.
Ah, yes, Regensburg. That wasn't just a standard bombing run. It was strategically vital, but also incredibly risky. They hit the Messerschmitt aircraft factory there, but instead of turning back towards England, they kept going, all the way to North Africa.
All the way to North Africa. Why?
To avoid flying back through the German air defenses they'd just stirred up, essentially. It was a way to maximize the impact while minimizing, hopefully, the return risk. It just shows you the kind of dangerous, really long-range stuff Harris was doing right from the start.
And crucially, these early missions, like Regensburg, they were often deep into Germany without fighter escorts, right?
That's a critical point. Largely unescorted, the long-range fighters, like the P-51 Mustang, that later made such a huge difference. They just weren't available in sufficient numbers or with the range needed yet. So these B-17 crews, they were basically on their own. Yes, they had guns, lots of them, but they were still relatively slow targets facing the full force of the Luftwaffe, sometimes for hours. It was just a brutal war of attrition. Every mission was a gamble.
A gamble that reached its absolute lowest point on one specific day, October 14th, 1943. The infamous Second Schweinfurt raid, better known now, chillingly, as Black Thursday.
Black Thursday. And the strategic thinking behind Schweinfurt, it's really key to understanding this. The target wasn't random at all.
No.
It was Germany's ball-bearing factories located in Schweinfurt. Now, ball bearings, they sound small, maybe insignificant.
Yeah, not like tanks or planes.
But they were the absolute heart of almost everything mechanical that moved or rotated in the German war machine. Tanks, aircraft engines, U-boats, even artillery pieces. Allied intelligence believed that if they could just knock out this one hub,
They could cripple the whole system.
potentially grind it to a halt. That was the theory. It was a major part of this big strategy called the Combined Bomber Offensive, the British bombing by night, the Americans trying precision daylight bombing to dismantle specific German industries.
And the scale of the American effort on that day for Schweinfurt was huge. 291 B-17s. I mean, that's an incredible number of planes. A real airborne armada sent to hit this one target.
A massive concentration of air power, yes. But the Germans knew how important Schweinfurt was. Their defense was. Well, it was perfectly prepared, incredibly fierce, and just relentless.
And this is where it gets really stark for Harris.
Yeah.
What happened next really highlights his extraordinary experience.
It does, because Black Thursday, it wasn't just a bad day. It was an absolute disaster for the U.S. 8th Air Force. A clear tactical win for the Germans, if you look at the losses.
The numbers are just hard to comprehend.
They really are. 60 B-17s shot down completely. Another 17 damaged so badly they were basically write-offs when they landed. And 121 more with moderate damage planes that somehow made it back, but riddled with holes.
Then the cruise.
Catastrophic. 650 men lost. That's out of the 2,900 who flew that day. Think about that. Almost 1 in 4. 22% of the bomber crews on that mission didn't come back.
How did the Germans manage that level of destruction?
They were waiting. They threw everything they had at the bombers. Fast Messerschmitt Brief 109s, yes, but also the heavily armed Focke-Wulf Phi 190s. Those were especially deadly in head-on attacks, just ripping through the B-17 formations. And they had something new, or relatively new then. The BR-21 unguided rockets. They'd fire these into the bomber formations from a distance.
Unguided rockets, wow.
Yeah, the idea wasn't necessarily pinpoint accuracy, but to shatter the defensive combat box formation the B-17s flew in. Break their tight defensive fire, it created chaos, isolated bombers, made them much easier targets for the fighters swooping in. It was just a meat grinder up there.
That cost is just unfathomable. It really makes you question the strategy behind sending them in like that, unescorted.
Well, hindsight is always 20/20, isn't it? The intelligence on the importance of ball bearings was right, but they seriously underestimated Germany's reserves and their ability to disperse production. Post-war studies showed Germany actually had huge stockpiles, and they'd already started moving production around, so the bombing, despite the horrific cost, it only stopped production for about 6 weeks.
Only 6 weeks. After losing 60 bombers.
Exactly. The losses were just unsustainable, and that raid, Black Thursday, it directly led to a major policy change. They suspended unescorted daylight bombing raids deep into Germany. That suspension lasted until February 1944.
When the long-range escorts finally arrived.
Precisely. When the P-51 Mustangs started arriving in numbers, able to go all the way to the target and back, it shows the steep and frankly tragic learning curve of air warfare strategy.
And yet, amidst all that carnage, George Harris's plane, the Cavalier, B-17F-42 3-year A-30, it made it back.
Not just made it back. The 322nd Squadron's daily report lists his aircraft as the only one from his specific formation to return from Schweinfurt that day.
The only one. Just think about that. Seeing planes around you exploding, going down, and yours is the single one from your group that lands back home.
It truly highlights the almost random nature of survival sometimes, the lottery of air combat. 60 planes lost, dozens more wrecked. How does one plane from a formation make it through that?
Skill. Luck.
It's impossible to know for sure, isn't it? Incredible skill from the pilot and crew, maybe. Disciplined flying, a momentary gap in the fighter attacks. Cloud cover appearing at just the right second. Or just sheer, unadulterated luck. Being in the one piece of sky the enemy didn't focus on for a few critical moments.
Whatever it was, it underscores that the line between life and death was incredibly thin. Seconds, inches, just the chaos of battle. He survived, but that day, it must have left a permanent mark.
Absolutely, yet he kept flying. Like so many others, incredibly, he went back up.
Yeah, the records show he flew more dangerous missions after Schweinfurt. To places like Bremen, another heavily defended target, a key German port, and even down to Bordeaux in France, hitting U-boat pens. And later, he often flew in a different B-17 nicknamed Miss America, which, one source clarifies, was a B-17G model, not the F like Cavalier.
Right, the G model. That's significant because the B-17G had that distinctive chin turret under the nose.
Ah, for frontal defense.
Exactly. 2.50 caliber machine guns right there, specifically added to counter those devastating head-on attacks the Luftwaffe perfected, the kind that were so deadly over Schweinfurt. It's a small detail, maybe, but it shows how tactics and technology were constantly evolving in response to the brutal lessons learned.
But the odds,
Yeah.
they eventually catch up, don't they? For so many bomber crews, it felt almost inevitable.
Tragically, yes.
On his 16th mission, December 22nd, 1943, Harris's luck ran out. He was flying Miss America, the B-17G. The target was Osnabrück or Münster in Germany. Seems there was some confusion that day due to weather or navigation.
Lemon issues, yeah.
His plane was hit. Badly. By flak, that's the anti-aircraft fire from the ground, and also by German fighters. The damage is catastrophic. He had to order the crew to bail out.
And think about the altitude, 7 kilometers. That's over 23,000 feet.
Freezing cold, thin air, a terrifying prospect.
Absolutely terrifying. He parachuted down over Velsen, which is in the Netherlands, and was captured on the ground. Captured by the SS.
The SS, not the regular German army or air force.
No, the SS. Which immediately signals a much more dangerous situation for any captured personnel, especially Allied airmen.
And there's a really tragic detail about that bailout, isn't there?
There is. It's heartbreaking. Amidst the absolute chaos of the plane breaking apart, Harris actually tried to help his turret gunner get out. Showed incredible selflessness even then. But tragically, his crewmate's parachute didn't deploy properly. It failed. He was the only member of the crew who didn't survive the bailout.
Oh, terrible. After everything else.
Just a final cruel twist. Harris and the rest of the surviving crew, they were all taken prisoner. And this is where his story shifts. From the intense, sudden violence of air combat to the long, grinding ordeal of captivity. His resilience was about to be tested in a completely different and perhaps even more profound way.
It's hard to even imagine surviving the air war, only to face that. So what happened to him as a prisoner of war? This part of his story is just, well, it's about extraordinary resilience, isn't it?
It absolutely is. His time as a POW was long and incredibly harsh, over a year. He was sent to Stalag 17.
Stalag 17. That name rings a bell for a lot of people, I think. Maybe from movies or books.
Definitely. It's probably one of the most famous or maybe infamous Luftwaffe POW camps for Allied airmen, known for its strict guards, tough conditions, but also for the constant ingenuity and resistance of the prisoners.
But the reality was likely far grimmer than any film.
Oh, undoubtedly. Daily life was just a relentless struggle against hunger, the bitter cold, the boredom, the psychological games the captors played, just trying to maintain your sanity and humanity. But even there, that human spirit, it finds ways to push back, you know? Harris was apparently quite active in things like digging escape tunnels.
Really? Like in the movies?
Yeah, these were incredibly complex, secret operations, digging through frozen ground, hiding tons of dirt, dealing with cave-ins, all under the constant threat of discovery by the guards. It took immense effort and cooperation. He also apparently helped build secret radios, just cobbled together from scavenged bits and pieces. These were lifelines, getting news from the BBC, keeping morale up, feeling connected to the outside world. Vital stuff.
He tried to escape himself too, didn't he?
He did. His personal drive for freedom was clearly immense. His first attempt failed, though, and the punishment was brutal. 30 days in solitary confinement.
30 days. Alone, in the dark, probably, after everything he'd already been through.
Unimaginable. Later, he was moved to a different camp, another Stalag. Incredibly, he tried to escape again. But he was recaptured that time, too. The determination is just astounding.
And wasn't there a moment, something even more dramatic, a near execution?
Yes. Almost unbelievable, but accounts state he was actually placed in front of a firing squad.
No.
Yeah, lined up. But then, at the very last second, a German army captain intervened and stopped it.
Why? How?
The story goes that this particular captain had an American wife and children. And apparently that connection, that shred of shared humanity, prompted him to defy orders and spare Harris's life. A truly remarkable moment of individual conscience stepping in.
That's incredible. But there was another layer of danger for Harris specifically, wasn't there? Something that made his captivity even more perilous.
Yes, and this is hugely significant. George Harris was Jewish.
Which, in Nazi Germany, under the SS initially and then in a POW camp, that was incredibly dangerous.
Extremely. A death sentence if widely known or if he fell into the wrong hands. Yet his life was protected not just by that one German captain, but repeatedly by the solidarity of his fellow prisoners.
How so?
There's this one absolutely extraordinary account. During the daily roll call, the appel, the guards ordered all Jewish prisoners to step forward. A terrifying command, potentially singling them out for transfer, or worse.
What happened?
In an incredible act of collective courage and defiance, all the prisoners stepped forward together. Every single one of them.
Wow. To protect him.
Exactly. They refused to let him be singled out. The sheer risk they all took standing together like that, it just speaks volumes about the bonds forged in those terrible conditions. An amazing act of camaraderie.
That's deeply moving. And his ordeal wasn't even over then, was it?
Yeah.
There were the death marches at the end.
Right. The final, cruel chapter. As the Allies were closing in from both east and west in early 1945, the Germans forced thousands of POWs out of the camps and marched them deeper into Germany, away from the advancing fronts.
The death marches.
That's what they became known as. Marching for weeks in the dead of winter, with hardly any food, water, or shelter. Guards were often brutal, prisoners suffering from exhaustion, starvation, disease, exposure. It was a desperate, final act of cruelty, trying to keep the prisoners as bargaining chips or simply out of spite. Harris endured that, too.
He survived all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Schweinfurt, being shot down. Stalag 17, solitary. The escape attempts, the firing squad, hiding his heritage, the death march. It's almost beyond belief.
It really is. When you step back and look at the bigger picture, George Harris's story becomes this incredibly powerful testament to the human spirit, doesn't it? It shows not just his own immense individual courage and sheer will to live, but also, and maybe this is just as important, those incredible bonds of solidarity, brotherhood, people looking out for each other under the absolute worst conditions imaginable.
A reminder that even in the darkest times, humanity can still shine through.
Exactly. It really tells you something about what people are capable of, both for themselves and for each other, when pushed to the absolute limit.
So after the war, George Harris made it back to America.
He did. He returned home, he rebuilt his life, he raised a family. He lived until the age of 85.
An incredible life, truly a hero, and just an amazing example of resilience for anyone. His experiences really drive home that behind all the statistics, the battle reports, the numbers of planes lost, there are these countless individual stories,
Wow.
sagas of unbelievable bravery, endurance, and just survival against all odds.
Absolutely. This deep dive into his life, it really hits home, doesn't it? The immense human cost of that air war, but also the incredible personal journeys. It reminds us that behind those black and white photos and grainy newsreels were real people facing impossible choices, forging deep bonds and demonstrating just an astonishing will to survive that really shaped a generation.
So, as you've been listening, what stands out most to you about George Harris's remarkable journey? What does his story make you think about when it comes to heroism? Not just the high-flying kind, but the quiet, grinding heroism of survival in captivity. Maybe think about the choices he made, the sheer impossible odds he stared down. And maybe, just as powerfully, think about the choices that others made, that German captain, his fellow prisoners, stepping forward choices that helped him defy those odds time and time again. Something to reflect on.